Yo, what's up, cycling fans? We're back with another episode of Pack Chatter. We got a great show for you today with my man Jeremy Clay, one of my favorite guys in local cycling, a guy I've been fortunate enough to work a lot with over the years. And I'll talk a little bit about him in just a second. Before we do, let's hit the sponsors. So first, we're sponsored by NYSBRA, the New York State Bicycle Racing Association. NYSBRA brings you schedules, state championships, grants, all kinds of really important stuff that helps racing go off. And they're right in the thick of it already here with the 2019 season. So hit them up on Facebook, check out their website at nysbra.com. Lots of good information for you, and show them some love because they make a lot of things happen that we need in order to have racing. Also, we're brought to you by Legacy Bikes. That's Legacy with an I. Spring's coming. Get your kid on a balance bike. It's the place to go. Hit Todd up. He knows his stuff, and he'll get your kid on the coolest two-wheel machine that you can find. And get your kid loving the bike early and enjoying this soon-to-be really nice spring weather that we got coming. Also, with Todd, he's got a clinic coming up here on March 30th and 31st through the Genesee Valley Cycling Club. You can hook up with him, get some upgrade points, learn some handling stuff. Todd's one of the best coaches anywhere. He knows his stuff. He's been doing it a long time. He's worked with people at the absolute top level of the sport. And I've been to some of the clinics before with him, and definitely it's a good experience. You're going to learn a lot no matter what level you're at. So hit him up. There's a few spots left in that clinic. So you can hit him up on Facebook for info, or hit up GVCC and check out the details on that. All right, we're also brought to you by Dirty Bikes. Dirty Bikes Gravel Series, a little less than a month away. We kick off Austin with the GOAT, the man, Jeremy Powers. He's coming in. Anthony Clark's coming in. It's going to be an unbelievable show. We got fast racing, we got cool courses, we got huge parties. We booked handsome young ladies to play at the after party. These guys rule. They're going to do a bunch of 90s stuff that I'm really stoked about. I've been posting some stuff on Facebook and Instagram there and some of their music, so you can hit us up there and see. And then we're going to keep that party going with Prattsburg. Jay Powell and Anthony are coming back for Prattsburg as well. And then round it off with Hills of High Tour, brand new race, brand new course. And Anthony will be at that one too. So it's going to be a loaded 3-race series. It's the Spring Classics in Western New York. So get out and come join us for the party, come join us for the racing, and truly kick off 2019 with the Dirty Bikes Gravel Series. All right, so let's on to the show. Today's guest, Jeremy Clay. Jeremy runs Bike Loft East Neutral Support. I've worked with him in almost every event I've done for the last 5 years. He'll be at Dirty Bikes again. He's been there every year. We've thrown gravel races. He does crits at the airport. He did our crits back in Mount Morris. He's done the road races we've put on in Avon. He's helped us out on Fondos in the past. The guy runs a really pro outfit that's just an amazing resource that a lot of local races do tap into, but a lot of them don't. And certainly something you wanna look at if you're putting on a race, or if you're going to a race and you're looking at which races are going to give you sort of the most bang for your buck. Look at the people who bring these guys in. Like it's an extra step that we put out because we really care about the racers and making sure they have the best experience possible. And you get it with this dude. You're going to hear him talk about some of his background in the sport. He worked neutral support at the Tour. And he's changing wheels for us, so it's a pretty cool experience. He knows a lot about the sport and has some really great stories he's going to share. One in particular that he gets at the very end of the episode, but I do want to touch on now, so that so you kind of get that and you can listen to him talk about it at the very end. Is he also runs a program called the Jaybird program, where they give out bikes to people who need them to try out, who want to try cyclocross or gravel. through a fleet of bikes that they have in memory of a friend of his who I was fortunate enough to just meet briefly in life. And it's a really nice story and a really nice way for him to that he goes about to remember Jason. So make sure you stick through the episode and you hear about how that program works, and hit him up. There's some info in the notes here if you want some more info about that program or about hiring him at an upcoming event. All right, so that's all we got. Get into the episode. Enjoy Jeremy Clay from Bike Loft East Neutral Support.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
All right, we're back with another episode of Pack Chatter. I'm your host, Tony, and with me, as always, is my man, Todd Shesky. What's up, buddy?
Well, I think we're solidly looking at the short end of winter here, and although you wouldn't have known by yesterday's 32 degrees and wind off the lake, but hey, Giro started and people were out, and I'm hoping to be good enough to race here shortly. So
yeah, it's pretty much race season, right? I mean, we're there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Giro's went out, but he had to cancel Sunday, but had Monday or Monday. Yeah, I wish. When do we all wish we were racing Monday? But we had Saturday, and I guess a smaller group, but it was still a little bit wintry out. And, but I know people are eager and people are looking, and clinic is just about filled up now for 2 weeks from out, and so yeah, it looks like there's a lot of hunger out there, so it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to the season.
All right, awesome. Well, we got an awesome guest today, a guy I've worked with a ton over the last 5 years, but every time I see him, we're both kind of moving at 100 miles an hour, so it's cool that we're going to be able to sit and chat here a little bit. But every time I put on an event, I bring him in because he helps everything just be so much more pro. He's from Bike Loft East. He provides our neutral support. If you've done any gravel that we've done, road, crit, his crew is always there and they are spot on, and we're really stoked to have him. So welcome Jeremy Clay from Bike Loft East Neutral Support.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. It's definitely a pleasure. As I told you before, Tony, working your events, it's always one of my things that I enjoy to do. I don't work every single event that the program runs anymore, luckily, but I always try to make it out to your events just because I love the atmosphere and love working with you guys.
Well, we always like having you, man. It makes everything amazing, and hopefully we'll tell some of those stories tonight a little bit. But yeah, if people haven't seen, and I want to get into your background here a little bit first, but if people haven't seen this or haven't been to our events or other events where you run, you guys show up with bikes, with wheels, with mechanics. I mean, you could fix absolutely anything on the fly. I don't know how many times I've seen you guys keep podium people in contention that, they're on a flat and you're out there, you got them back up and running and they're on the podium and they'd be out of the race otherwise. And you come with some really cool equipment, four-wheelers with bikes on them for the gravel and all that kind of good stuff. So it's a really cool experience for the racers, and we're really lucky to have you local doing that for us.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a blast. I mean, the program, from when it started and how it started, it's kind of a funny story and just kind of silly stuff. But a couple of us got together and made it happen. If you want me to go into the actual start of it, I mean, back when I was living in Salt Lake City, I used to live out there. I worked for Reynolds Cycling, running their warranty department and some technical stuff for them with their wheel program and stuff years ago. And I had a whole bunch of wheels left in my garage after I was laid off when the economy crashed in 2019, and it was all stuff that they were going to throw out anyway. So I kind of put a bunch of stuff together, and I was running like a little neutral support program out there just for crits, pretty much. That's about all I was doing. And when I decided to move back to Central New York and start my own shop, I still did the same thing at a couple of events here and there. And then one day, one of the guys that works for the program and has been a key part of the program, everybody knows him as Fizz. His real name is Derek Perry. Derek and I were talking, and he had just bought a motorcycle, and we were like, oh, we should build a rack for this. And I'm like, well, I can weld. And one of the other guys that works at the bike shop's like, I got a welder. So they brought it in, and we sat there one day with a bunch of scrap metal trying to figure it out. We bought some wheel forks from Yakima to be able to mount to the rack, and boom, we built a wheel rack and went to a bike race with it. And it just progressed from there. The next thing, we ended up with a van, and we had a roof rack on it and a bunch of bikes. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, I'm going to buy this Volkswagen wagon here. We'll set that up. And when I did, I contacted a couple companies, and Fuji Bicycles came on board, and they were like, hey, here's 5 bikes. Start your season off with them and see what happens. And then Fuji owned Oval Concepts, so they ended up sending us a ton of wheels, and it just went from there. And after one season of it like that, the next thing I knew, I bought another car and another motorcycle. So I had 2 cars, a van, or 2 motorcycles. We had at that point 15 bikes. God, I don't remember how. I think I had somewhere around 180 pairs of wheels at that point. And it was like, and this is like 2 years after it just kind of like, hey, let's do this. It would be fun.
Right.
and it was fun. Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, it all worked out. Basically, I decided not to do advertising for the bike shop anymore. I let that be the advertising for the bike shop. And we've done Ironman level triathlon events. We've done National Crit Series races. We've done national road races. We've done the Reading, what was it called? The Reading 120, I think it was, and then changed to I can't remember what the second name was after they changed it. But I didn't
know they changed it. I thought I was still going to call it the Reading. So
I think it was something before it was the Reading. I can't remember exactly, but we've done a couple different events like that. And we've done, the Bat and Kill. We did that one year with Dieter. It was a blast. We had a great time, and then that whole program kind of changed. So obviously, us working with that event didn't. But we did a lot of other Dieter's races too. We did the Tour of the Catskills quite a few times. I mean, it was a blast. We've definitely been rolling along, and then the gravel series and the gravel stuff started, and it really, for years we tried to get in to do something with the Black Fly, but unfortunately there were rules against motorcycles not being allowed on that course. So
yeah, because they've got a lot of like rail trail and stuff like that I think isn't on the public roads like we run.
No, actually the whole course is on dirt roads, but there's like a rule dating back into like the 60s or 70s that doesn't allow motorcycles on that road, because I guess motorcycle gangs used to rip and roar up through there and terrorize all the small towns. And I guess Inlet actually used to be like a big motorcycle gang hangout back in the 70s. So
really, I didn't know that.
That's what kept that from happening. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how the program got started. And like I said, it just went from there. And then, last year we decided, this gravel thing is really taking off. So what the heck, let's get a 4-wheeler, the receiver hitch on the back, and grab a bike rack that holds a bunch of bikes, and we'll be able to drive along the course with bicycles too, not just wheels at the gravel races. Cause some of your races you definitely can't get a car through. So
right. Yeah. No, that was a cool addition last year when you came with the 4-wheelers, because you've been doing our gravel when I first started doing gravel, I think in 2015, and I think you've done every one I've done. And last year was the first year where you're like, dude, I got 4-wheelers this year. And I was like, okay. And then you show up and you got like full bikes on the back of 4-wheelers. That was really cool.
Yeah. It was definitely, just one more thing. Like, how can we make it that much better? Not just for the racer, but also for the promoter. It's something that shows that you as a promoter are putting that dedication towards your racers at the race. A lot of people think, oh, the promoters just want our money and that's what they're doing. It's like, no, you guys don't do it for the money. You love doing it, because nobody puts a bike race on to make a lot of money. It doesn't. We don't make a lot of money doing the race. It's the sheer love of racing. I mean, I used to race a ton, and I just, with life and family and all that type of stuff, I don't have the time to be able to really train anymore, but it still allows me to get to the races and enjoy the racing and be out there. I mean, those guys that like you, who are still getting yourself into the racing and still out there, and with the kids and stuff, like, holy cow, I'm proud of you. I wish I had the time with, I guess if I got rid of the bike shop, I probably could, but that's definitely not happening.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not easy to find that time for sure, and it dwindles as the kids get older too. Your kids are in the middle of everything right now, so So you got a lot going on. But yeah, it is a cool feature for riders, especially because it's different. I think not a lot of promoters or riders necessarily always understand the difference. That you're not running SAG support. Like you're not a van at the back of the race that if you get a flat, they come and find you eventually and kind of pick you up and help you finish the event. You are at the front of the race, and we always make sure that your first priority is to keep riders in contention, and you take care of those riders and keep them competitive, and then you go back through and kind of sweep the course, and you have some support out there doing that as well. But it's a really different feature than sort of the local bike shop that's got a van and a pump and some tubes and is sort of keeping riders moving to finish the ride.
Yeah, definitely for sure on that. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, there's every bike shop has got their mechanic, the guy who's the great mechanic. Some are lucky enough to have 2 or 3 of them, and they're awesome guys, and they work really well, and they go out to events sometimes, and some of them get it, and some of them don't. And it's like, hey, bike shop mechanics, it's not an easy job. To do the race support, it's a little different than that. And there's guys who can transition between it. Luckily I've got my entire staff that can, but that's only because I've picked and choosed and made sure that everybody that works at the shop can do it that way. But race mechanics is a little different because you basically have to figure out how to keep that person in contention if they have a problem. So it's not just oh, how do I fix the bike for this person? It's how do I fix this bike in the split second, get them back on it, get them back into the pack. Especially, the gravel stuff is really hard because it's not like a big pack rolling down the road that ebbs and flows. When you're racing gravel, that speed stays. Those guys are just on the rivet the whole time. And so when somebody goes down on something like that, trying to get guys back in it's not easy. And then even now with all the different choices and equipment, trying to figure out, do I just put a new tube in this guy's wheel, or do I have to change? Do I have the stuff to change an entire wheel? Do I have the right disc rotor size? So those are all things when we stop with a racer that we have a split second to look at. So it's not getting freaked out by what's going on. It's just I have a job to do and finish it.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen you do it many times. I mean, there was one that comes to mind there last year at Austin. There was a guy from Canada named Sean Garth. You remember that? He crashed in the swamp and tore his leg up pretty good. And he was chasing guys like Dan Timmerman and Anthony Clark and Magnus, and he was close to the front, and you got him back up and going, and he ended up catching those guys, and I think he finished third behind Anthony and Magnus.
If I remember right, he was riding like an old handmade steel bike with regular rim brakes and 10-speed components on it. If I remember, he actually crashed on the gravel on the road. He hit a patch of gravel and went down hard.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on something you were just talking about, Jeremy. Is in the gravel, and it's a bit different with it being not a bigger pack like you have in a road race. So where it's a little easier to make the decision when the brake is on the road, when the brake is 30 seconds up the road, there's enough of a gap, and you go and you send somebody up with the brake, and somebody else stays with the field. But how do you start to manage that with even if you had 3 guys on 4-wheelers or off-road vehicles? How do you manage it as it starts to split up? How are you guys making those decisions of who you're staying with? Because you could have, paint a scenario. There's 2 guys out the front. There's 3 guys chasing. There's 4 guys chasing them, and then there's a pack of 10. So how are you making those decisions out there so people kind of have an idea of what support they're getting?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, and it's a tough one for me and the mechanics when we're out on the road really making that decision. On the road side of things, that's super simple. You've got an official in the car with you. There's usually a lead official. If you've got 2 vehicles or 2 motorcycles out there, whatever, they're making all the calls for you. They tell you to go up the road. They tell you to come back. It just depends on what the gap is, and there's set rules for that. In the gravel stuff, we don't really have the officials with us because obviously I don't have an official on the motorcycle with me, or neither my other guys do, and the 4-wheeler certainly doesn't have that. But so we're really kind of making the call on our own. So essentially what we'll usually do is one person is always with the money. One person is with that front. Now, if we get gapped out so much where we've got 4 or 5 minutes between, the top 15, 20 guys, obviously that makes it a lot harder. and we'll usually move a couple motorcycles like within that vicinity, and then we end up just playing leapfrog. Well, but what we do actually is we kind of twofold that. So when we do the leapfrog thing, a lot of times what will happen is if I'm up with the leader, I'll let him know that I'm going to drop back to check on the other racers because I have to make sure that everybody gets in. But he usually likes that too, because when I tell him that, I also tell him at the same time, I'm going to time this and I'm going to get a split for you. So I literally just stop on the road and I start a stopwatch. It's on the motorcycle. All the motorcycles are set up with GPS. They all have, what I want to say, they all have things to measure the distance. They all have stopwatches on them to get times, gaps, all that type of stuff. So we literally can give that right down too. So I'll hit the brakes, I'll stop, I'll start the timer. When the next group comes, I'll write down really quick what the time gap is. I'll yell it out to them. The next group comes, I'll write it down, and then I'll move myself back up through, and I'll just check on guys as I go through, literally pulled right up. Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Because generally on the motorcycle, we're not just carrying the equipment. We're also carrying a little bit of nutrition. We usually have a bunch of gels that, we get. The last time we got a bunch of stuff from Goo. One time we got a bunch of stuff from Power Bar. So they just hand it to us sometimes because they know we're out there. So we'll have that stuff with us, and it's, really, here you go, just hand it off and keep the guys rolling. But we'll go back up through the pack or up through the groups and hand stuff out and give them splits and then get back up to the start. And usually we're only gone from that lead guy for maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes. Granted, a lot of stuff can happen in there, but they understand too, because they are kind of racing on their own. If we get to them and there's a mechanical, we help them get back in as quick as possible, but they've usually started to do whatever they need anyways themselves. If we get there with a brand new wheel, it gets them back out there in, 2 seconds instead of 3-4 minutes. So that always helps. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. We just kind of pick and choose and bounce around based on that. If there's a series going and we know that points are on the line, like when we come to the final race of the series this year, we're going to make sure we know who is in contention for points and what they need and the gaps and stuff like that. And we'll obviously pay attention to those points for them as best we can, so that we know that if somebody's out there and they're going for points and they're chasing down whatever, we can be right on top of that and help them make sure that they have the best chance of doing it, and a mechanical doesn't take them out. That's the biggest reason for neutral support across the world. If you watch any race, the whole idea of having, when you see that flotilla of cars at the Tour de France following behind the Mavic cars that are there, when you're at any event, the whole point of neutral support or any support that's in the race is so that the athlete can do their best without being taken out of the event because of a mechanical. And that is the reason why that's the reason why we do it. It's, for us, that is what it is. We always joke around that the only reason that you don't finish a race is because you can't finish a race, not because your bike let you down.
Yeah, and I think there's an important aspect there that you kind of highlight there is that you guys are up on what's going on, so you're not just turning up the morning of and kind of winging it. If it's a series, you know who's up on points, you know who some of the riders are. So at least, even if you can't recognize them by their kit down the road a piece, you can get their numbers, and you can kind of, and you guys are running radio communication and things that you guys are able to tag team those things and give those guys kind of the best support they can. And it is a little different from the road, obviously. Like you say, when you get those big UCI races, and most local guys don't get to do those, but when you do a big UCI race in the caravan, they already have a team car. So if you're doing neutral there, you're really filling the gap for when the team car is already tied up or can't get there in time.
Yeah, for sure.
So knowing that information, I think, says a lot about what you guys are bringing to the event. You're not just showing up with some wheels and cruising around. And I think, like to Tony's point, that you're not a SAG vehicle, right? And you're able to kind of make better critical decisions of which group should I be going with, which okay, this guy's not that far up, and I can leapfrog up there and keep an eye on him, and so you kind of got a little eyes in the back of your head, and you got some information, and you got some intel, and with some communication, you guys are really giving them, other than a dedicated service vehicle, they've got about the best shot.
Yeah, exactly. It not only do we have all the other stuff that I already said on there, but also, like, most of the motorcycles when we're out there riding, or even the cars, we have 2 cell phones in them. We have one that's Verizon, one that's AT&T, because in some places you've got one and not the other. And that way, whether I've got if it's an emergency and I got to get a hold of you guys or, something else. Luckily, I've never had to call an ambulance. I've been graced in that. I hope I never have to. That's how it is. I mean, we also have. I've got guys on the program who are actually like. One of the guys is actually a national ski patroller, but he's also like a what do you call it, a wilderness rescue guy. So he's got like all his certifications to do like any type of saving if he has to. We kind of go through that. All the guys on the program have CPR, first aid, all that type of stuff, and we do that just because it's a multifaceted program. We're out there, and the chances of someone going down, I assess every guy that goes down in a crash. Before I fix their bike, I look at their body. That's one of the things that we have to do. I look at their eyes. Do they look like they've got a concussion? I look at the body too. And just making sure that everything's good, so that if we have to do anything other than just fixing their bike, we're there to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big distinction. I mean, you guys are, especially in these gravel events, it's remote. It's not on well-traveled roads, and being able to be even first aid for people could be really crucial on something like that. So that's a big value add. Maybe it's not something that's on the forefront of people's mind necessarily when they line up for a gravel race. Is they're like, hey, the neutral support guys, if I really have a bad crash, could help me.
Well, and when you have these, having these guys come in every time for us, whether it's been gravel or road or crit, it's also just a huge advantage to have guys who have been at and worked so many events over the years. As a promoter, I put on 3, 4, 5 events a year, and that's a fair amount for a small local guy putting on races. A lot of people, they're putting on one event a year, and when you have these guys come in who are at dozens of events a year, you're getting such a high level of support on just so many different things that come up that you can go, well, where should we put the feed zone here today? Like, what do you think about this or that? Or I always use Jeremy for all those kinds of different just questions and sort of like what looks good with different aspects of the course, or are you seeing issues with places where there might be crashes or things like that when he goes out and pre-rides that are just you don't necessarily think about because you're thinking about neutral support, but those things are just gigantic to have that level of expertise showing up and helping you run things.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's just it's a huge relief to somebody like Tony when you can just kind of like these guys show up and that's a whole segment I just don't have to deal with. Right? I mean, yeah, it's like turnkey, right? You're like, okay, these guys know the gig. They show up, they got their part handled. It's hands off, and as I've promoted a lot of races over the years, and being able to have resources that you can plug in like that is invaluable. It really is.
It's the equivalent of having, it's just like having a really good officiating staff who you can kind of like rely on to handle a lot of these things. It's another set of that. They're doing a whole different gig that just makes race day so much easier for the race promoter. I always say that getting on, if I do my job once the race starts, like I'm kind of, just like reacting to any sort of major stuff, and everybody else is in place, and they're the ones who I'm putting the right people in the right places to do the gig, and they kind of take over. And these guys are a huge, huge part of that.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that too. I mean, yeah, having it, we essentially do have a turnkey program for a race promoter. When you hire us, we come in with a lot of different things. Obviously, we help you promote your race too a little bit, but at the same time, like when we come in, because we're turnkey, we already talk to the officials ahead of time. Most of the time, if it's like your crit race or your or the what I want to say the Avon Road race.
Mm-hmm.
Anything like that, we've already spoken to your official before the day when you show up to actually see them. And we've gone over things and, what car is going to go with what race, what makes the most sense, to do all these different things. How can we, when one race is done, how can we filter another vehicle from one of the other races in? Because just because they're done with that race for the day, the races are still going on. We're still going to send the car back out and get it out on the road or into another race if there's one that's free. Nobody sits around until everything's done. So, having that turnkey program makes it easy. I mean, we've even had races where we've showed up and the officials are like, oh, I don't have to go to talk to the promoter about that now because you guys are here, so it's all set. You know, so it literally we actually help ease the officials' minds when it goes to it, which is really cool. I like that, and we've got a really good what I'm going to say, a really good communication with the officials on that side of things too. So it's always it's always been really cool to be able to just have that, and when you have that type of communication with the officials are a little bit more lenient on how the racers get to race. And I'm not saying they're going to let them break the law, yellow line rule, things like that. But, when it comes to a sticky bottle or something like that, they look the other way a little bit more when we're there, because it's not so much the random guy who, oh, I've done this before at a race for my buddy, so can I do it now because I've seen it on the tour?
Right.
It's not that. It's we have a crew that's worked a lot of races, and we know what's going on. So the officials are a little bit more lenient and allow the guys, especially the elite guys, to race more like an elite race should race.
And what are some of the bigger races you guys have been doing? You guys have been expanding quite a bit in the last couple of years here. So where have you guys been touching down?
We did, but we actually started slowing down a little bit. We I don't want to say that the guys are not getting burnt out. We're trying to find a couple more guys. The biggest thing for me is when I started the program of the crew, I was the only licensed race mechanic, and there at the time there was only one other licensed race mechanic in New York, and he lived down in like the Plattsburgh area. And I used to race mountain bikes with him back in the day, and I was going to give him a call, but then I heard that he had kids and stuff like that, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to let him go. I'm not gonna try to chase him. So what I actually had to do is I sent a bunch of guys to get licensed. And it's not easy because you've got one time a year where you can go to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and go through the mechanics clinic. Mm-hmm. That's it, one time a year. And I think it's the week between, or it's one of the weeks between Christmas or Thanksgiving and Christmas that you can go for. So it's such a short window, and you have to get accepted. There's only 50 spots. And, there's guys from all over the country trying to get in. Plus, because the U.S. is the only country that has a licensing clinic for mechanics. No other country has it. There's actually people that come from outside of the U.S. to get it. Because when you're working as a team mechanic or neutral support in the U.S., if you're foreign, you still have to have it. So it's a lot harder to get into than people think, because there are guys coming from all over the place. To try to get into it. So, I've had to write quite a few letters to get my guys in, and luckily the guys who are in charge of the licensing clinic have always been really, really helpful to me, because we've been building a program. We're not SRAM, or now it's called the Look program. We're not those guys. We're not as big as those guys are or anything like that. We'd love to be someday. But yeah, so it really is one of those things where they've been really helpful, because I've been trying to build this program that really helps these mechanics get the skills and everything that they need. I mean, I've got guys now who are mechanics from like New York City, New Jersey, Massachusetts, things like that, who are in the game, who are actually some of the guys who've been in the game longer than I have. I mean, 30-year mechanics who are actually calling me to see, hey, do you need anyone this weekend? I heard you were going to this race. I'm free if you need some help, so it's kind of cool to get that and have guys like that offering up their services. So,
yeah, that is cool. Can you tell us, how did you get into the race mechanic? Like, before you started the business, your own business, how did you get into to that, and what's some of the experience you have there before you got into running your own business?
Well, I raced for years. I did a lot of mountain bike racing, did some road racing. I did quite a bit of road racing, actually, but it just never really went anywhere. I was trying. I grew up, I was a couple years older than Dan Timmerman, actually about the same age as Mike Jones. I was actually going over some stuff a little bit earlier, trying to put dates on it. If I remember right, I used to race mountain bikes with Mike Jones down in, I'd drive down to Shenango Valley State Park down in Binghamton to race like a Wednesday night series that they used to have. And that's where I bumped into Mike Jones back when we were both in like high school.
Okay.
So we used to race together down there, and it's funny because we'd get down there and race, and Mike was always just, he was always a riot the way he acted and stuff like that. He was kind of a big kid, but the kid could race.
Right.
He's obviously gotten, he's had his ups and downs and stuff like that with his weight. He always jokes about it, but I mean, when he was younger, he was a pretty big kid, but man, that kid could put some power down on a mountain bike.
Yeah,
And he had skills to to follow back then.
He's coming on next week for what we're calling the comeback show, because he's back on a pro contract after 10 years off. So we're going to talk to him next week about his new pro contract and all that good stuff. So yeah, Mike's a fun guy, and I've seen some of the pictures from you guys going to Arizona. I think from way back in the day with you and Dan and Mike.
Yeah. I remember one year driving out there, we ran in, him and Dan went out, and I left. I think I left a day or two later because they spent some time in Texas, and I bumped into him at Texas at I think it was Dan's, like an aunt or something like that, at her house. We met up, and then we drove the rest of the way. What did we do? We camped in the Saguaro National Forest a couple nights because we didn't have a place to live. We went out there with no idea what the heck we were doing. It was literally just, sleeping in the back of the car, sleeping in a tent here, sleeping on somebody's floor there, until we finally got an apartment. But yeah, so no, it was fun. We definitely did a lot of that. I hadn't seen Mike in many, many years, and bumping into him at your races this year, brought a lot of memories back, and it was really nice to kind of catch back up with him. Dan, on the other hand, I've seen on and off for many years. When I worked with Reynolds, when he quit racing over in Europe and he had come back to the States, and he was I don't remember who he was racing under at that point, but he was riding an old Freude Fruta Cannondale bike, and he was placing on the podium at Gloucester. And I called Dan up. I'm like, Dan, your equipment's a little weak, isn't it? And he's like, hey, I'm just riding at whatever I got. So I was at Reynolds, and I was like, well, I can send you some wheels, So I went to the Blem section and just grabbed a bunch of rims and built up some hand-built wheels for him and sent him a bunch of tubulars out. And the guys at what was it back then? It was at Challenge. The guys at Challenge were like, hey, we got some tires. We were wondering if you guys would want to test some. So I was like, hey, I got the perfect guy. Can you send me a bunch and I'll send it to him? He's racing on the pro circuit. So, it's just hooking Dan up with whatever he could. I mean, I started working with Dan at the other bike loft, the original bike loft. I started working with Dan there when he was a little kid. I mean, I think he was 14 when he started there, and he was a skinny, scrawny. I mean, he still is skinny and scrawny, but he's a little bit more solid when it comes to racing. But back then, him and his brother Matt, who's now with Trust Suspension or Trust Engineering. It's a new company that just started up some sweet new forks that they're making. I've known those two forever. Matt I raced on and off with too with the mountain bike stuff through the years. His brother Matt actually was one of my partners back on the 24-hour mountain bike racing down in West Virginia that we did back then. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I got started, was all that mountain biking stuff and working at the bike shop, and then moved back to the States and got the job with Reynolds. And when I was with Reynolds, that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Got to do a lot of stuff. Got to spend some time at the Tour de France. Sat in the car, worked with the Egger 2Bell team for a little while, which was cool. They were one of the type of stuff with Europe, and while I was working with Reynolds, I just decided I was going to go get my mechanics license, because it just seemed like the next step for me, because the mechanics world was moving so fast, and I wanted to better myself, and really there was nothing else for me to do at that point to better myself than to do that. So that's really where my mechanics skills came. I got lucky. One of the mechanics at the time with the SRAM program, actually just after SRAM had taken over, it was Campy for years. Just after SRAM had taken over, I was out at Sea Otter, and one of the mechanics on that program, Jose, he gave me the opportunity to sit in the car at Sea Otter during the pro race. Holy cow! Going down the coast in the back of one of those the back of one of those Volvos. That was certainly an interesting experience. I will always buy Pirelli tires after that experience.
So how was it? What were your experiences and differences? You spent some time in the tour, which is that's pretty epic right there. I mean, kind of the behind the scenes stuff, and what are some of the differences you see between things like, I mean, the tour, right? The tour is the biggest bike race in the world, no matter how you want to slice it. And did you do some other one-day stuff while you're there? And then what are some of the differences that you know between maybe the biggest race tour, some of the other ones in Europe, and what you see here, even road scene, or and if you did any off-road or classics when you were in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really comes down to the difference. Not so much the difference between those big events. Yeah, the tour is the tour. It's the big show, but it's still just another day working on bikes. It really is. And honestly, those days in the car, they're long. You basically, I don't want to say you dehydrate yourself, but you do your best not to drink because you don't get out of the car that often, and when you're in the car 5, 6 hours, 7 hours, you just, you got to hold it. So,
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of like that. So then it's a mad dash for the bathroom, rehydrate, wash bikes, service bikes, eat dinner, go to bed. So
right,
it's just kind of what it is. About the only thing that I've ever had a problem with that side, because it's the team stuff. That's the difference between really is team versus neutral support. So like with the team stuff, really the next morning when you get to an event, you're cleaning tires. You might have somebody who wants you to change a cassette. Somebody decides, I just, I'd rather have a 25 than a 28 today. That's really the difference that you would get in that scenario. Really, it's, otherwise all the work is done at nighttime. And neutral support, the stuff that we do now pretty much all the time is completely different. Because when I go to a race, I mean, I've got, what I want to say, my toolbox weighs like 85 pounds. If I'm a team mechanic, my toolbox doesn't weigh 25 pounds because
Right.
I've only got the tools with me that I need to work on the bicycles that the team riders are racing with.
Right,
And my toolbox doesn't even go in the car with me. It's a small jump pack that goes in the car, and then it's just, again, it's the specific things that I need for that. If I'm running a team that's got Di2, I got a battery. That's maybe 2 batteries in my bag, and that's the only thing that really adds any weight to it. As a neutral support mechanic, you carry so many extra tools, and I still carry tools that the modern bikes don't even need, because I don't know when some kid is going to be riding around the race start finish area and they've got a problem with their bottom bracket, and I need a pronged tool to adjust an American style bottom bracket
Right.
for that little kid, because he sees the racers riding around and he thinks it's the coolest thing and he wants to emulate it, and we need to help promote that. So I still carry tools that do that type of stuff, because it's not just about the racers at the race. It's about anybody that's on bikes at the race. And it's about creating a feel at the event to make everybody want to do it, So yeah, as a neutral support mechanic, you're carrying all these different tools. You have all these different things that come at you. Let's see, before the start of the Grand Fondo at the Avon Road Race last year, I had one woman come up to me with a bent derailleur hanger on a Di2 bike. The next bike that I had to work on had like 9-speed Campy on it, and it had a bad cable that we had to replace. And then we had like numerous flats before the start of it. So it was just changing tires because it was wet. That morning was wet. So,
Sure.
It's just, we had that. And then you always get, well, what am I supposed to run for pressure today? I don't know what I need, So how long have you been racing your bike and you don't know what your pressure is supposed to be? So you get all these different crazy things that they're just thrown at you, and you have just a few minutes. I mean, you've seen us send guys to the start line at crits without their bike because we're trying to fix it because they didn't realize that it needed this, or they had a flat at the last minute, and we're rushing to do whatever we can to get their bike, and we're running to the start line before you guys sound the gun to send them off. So yeah, it's just that constant barrage of different stuff that's for that type of thing versus for neutral support, say, versus being a team mechanic.
Right. And how was it? How was the landscape kind of changing now with the push into road disc brakes, and now you got rim brakes, you got disc brakes, or at least and I'm still on rim brakes because I really don't want to brake all that much anyways. So I'm holding out. But I mean, you have this such a mix out there now, and trying to know what you need to bring. If somebody has a front, I mean, it used to be easy. Your left hand's up. Oh, the guy's got a front flat. I grab a front wheel and I'm good to go. And now it's like, am I grabbing a disc or a rim?
Right. Yeah. It's a good yell. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, I mean, so when we carry stuff in the neutral support, especially like if we go to a crit, crits are easy because you've got a little bit of time to work with. You've got a lap, sometimes 2 laps, depending on the course. But so that's pretty easy. But I mean, if I go to an event like that in the car, I'm going to have 9-speed Shimano wheels. I'm going to have 10-speed Shimano. I'm going to have 10-speed Campy. But then I'm going to have 11-speed because that covers everything. We're on the verge of 12-speed being available now too. But then you've also got to have, you've got to have 10-speed disc brakes with standard 135 millimeter spacing and 100 up front. We've decided to go this way. We run 4-inch rotors on everything because a 4-inch rotor will actually still grab on a 6-inch rotor setup. There are a lot of bikes that do have 6-inch rotors, especially some of the early disc brake bikes that have quick releases on them still have 6-inch rotors with them. I think pretty much every company had at least a front like that, except for Cannondale's. They always had 4-inch. But so you have like all that type of stuff that you have to figure out. But so then we've got the through axle disc brakes, and everything on that again is 4-inch. And then you've got the through axle rears, which some of them are 135, some of them are the new 142 spacing. So we're carrying so many different wheels, trying to fit all that on the motorcycle. I'm in the process of building new racks for the back of the motorcycles so that we can carry at least 2 to 3 more wheels this year so that we have everything. Because I still have to run quick release. Then I have to run
it's kind of crazy when in Europe on all the latest what all the changes are, and I kind of just fell behind a few years ago because I was like, I'm not gonna keep changing everything, and and it's like all the stuff it's like this reverse of what happened back in the 80s where we had kind of this consolidation of standards, right? And it was like, hey, everybody finally went square taper on bottom brackets, right? It was square taper, and you might have 2 bottom bracket styles. You had English thread, or something. If you got kind of crazy, you had some Italian threaded thing, and that was it, right? And so like everybody's cranks fit on anybody's bottom bracket, and then everybody wheels were wheels. I mean, it didn't matter whose you had. You could throw it in there. You had a 6 or a 7-speed freewheel, and that was it, and it worked. And you had friction shifting, so even if it was a little clunky, you could make it work. And it seems like if we had this kind of consolidation of like there was these standards. Now it's like this Wild West, and it's a little bit limiting even for a neutral support because you're out there going like, well, instead of being able to take like 4 or 5 sets of full wheel, now you're like, well, I got one of this, one of that, one of this, one of that, and so it's kind of limiting because you're like, well, I just gave up the through axle 4-inch rotor, and now I got another guy that needs one, but I don't have room to carry everything, but I got this really nice quick release rim brake, and it's like, okay, I mean, it would, and then maybe that brings up a question. At what point do you just stuff it in there and be like, you know what, you're getting this front wheel, and you just won't have brakes.
Yeah, no, we can't. Unfortunately, we can't do that for safety purpose. Yeah, you just can't. You can't not send somebody on the road without brakes. We've actually taken disc brake wheels and put them on a rim brake bike because all of our disc brake rims that we run actually still have brake tracks. We built them that way specifically, so that we had multi-use. You do run into a problem because some of the forks on certain bikes, because the aero profiles and stuff, won't allow the disc rotor to actually clear.
Right.
A couple of my guys carry, because all the ones that we use, not all the ones, but the through axle ones, the quick release ones that we use, a lot of them they use the lock ring, like a cassette lock ring. So I've actually had some of my mechanics actually just rip the disc off really quick because it's not like a cassette where you have to hold the chain whip on the cassette and then crack it loose. You literally just have a lock ring in the tool, so you can spin the tool and take the rotor off quick, throw it into your bag on the motorcycle or in the back of the car, and then throw it on the bike if you have to. If you run out of wheels, that's the thing. It really comes down to if you're getting low on wheels. Last year at the Avon Road Race, it was the first time I've ever had to do it, but I literally had to play kind of what I want to say, like a trade-off with wheels and grab wheels from one car from one race and put them into another. We actually had to stop one of the cars for I want to say it was 20 seconds on the start-finish line at the race and move some wheels from one of the cars to another car because one race just had a massive amount of flats and we had to get all those guys back in, and all of a sudden we had next to no wheels in the car. So luckily we have enough wheels floating around that we're capable of doing that. But that's the thing when you're, if you go into our service course where we have the cars, the bikes, the motorcycles, there is a wall of wheels, and people walk into my service course and they look at it and they're like, I don't know what you do, but that's a lot of wheels. There's just some people who don't understand the program. I've got friends, family, things like that who don't really understand what we do with the program. I've got promoters who hire us that don't actually understand what we do with the program.
Right.
It's got so many different facets to it. But yeah, you walk into the garage there and it's just wheel after wheel after wheel, and it just gets more and more. And we've been talking with another company to take over our wheel sponsorship for us. Haven't gotten it solidified yet, but I was like, listen, I'm going to cover up logos on the other wheels, but I'm not going to get rid of them. I need to keep those wheels in the program because we have run out or almost run out of wheels before. I've had almost 180 pairs of wheels on the road before with problems at big events like triathlons and stuff like that. So, I mean, it does happen,
Right,
So,
right. And you've been, having done this for a while, and you have the shop and everything tied together, and you've been in the industry working for Reynolds and from the kind of manufacturing side of the industry. And so, what are your thoughts on the consolidation, or is it going to be kind of just keep more diversity keep coming out? It seems like every time now, like you said, but now we have 12 speed coming. There's 11. There's I just upgraded from my 10 stuff. So like, okay, now I'm riding 11, but it was like I was going to hang on to that 10 for even longer. But you just find, like, do you find it? What's the kind of the feel that you have? Is it going to be more diverse, or are we going to start to kind of come to some standards? We're going to, okay, look, everybody's going to start moving towards 4-inch rotors on through axles, or what seems to be the kind of the winner?
Yeah, well, there's actually a UCI standard. I don't know what it's going to change to now because of the 11 or the 12 speed, but there was a UCI standard that said if you were going to run disc brakes, you have to run 4-inch rotors. You have to run this hub size front and rear. You have to have a rotor spaced to a certain point, and and they're 11 speed. And that way, if there was ever a neutral support situation, your team car couldn't get to you, neutral support was going to have what you needed. So that was the mandate that was set out by UCI. So there are some rules on that for racing, but that's only at the elite level.
Mm-hmm.
So granted, we work some pretty big cyclocross races. I see so many different things come in. Some guys run a 4-inch rotor in the back and a 6-inch up front at the elite level. Some guys don't. Some guys just run 4 and 4. It really comes down to like just whatever guys want to do, and when it comes to the running neutral and you're doing it for, the general public, if you want to call it that, for racing, the non-elite level races, they're going to have whatever they got. I mean, we ran into a problem at a race last year, 2 years ago. Somebody had a Cannondale from, I don't remember how far back, but Cannondale was like the first company to ever put disc brakes on a cyclocross bike. They did it.
I have that bike.
It's got a 130 rear hub spacing, which is the traditional road standard. Mm-hmm. Anything that's been done for disc brakes now for bicycles is 135, because that's what mountain bikes were, and it was just easy to transfer all those standards over and make it all work. We tried to put every single, because we have a bunch of different styles with a couple different hubs because the rotors sit in or outboard more slightly. So we tried to put every single one into it we could, and we couldn't do it. So in the midst of one of my mechanics trying to fix it, I just changed the tire on and set the person back out on their own wheel. Luckily they had, luckily that's what they had. It was a flat, they had a flat with a torn tire. So I just put a new tire on it and put a new tube on their own rim and got them back out. But yeah, it took, that took 35 seconds instead of 10 seconds to get them back on course.
Right, right.
So no matter what you do, you're going to run into something that you have to make a split decision and do something. And a lot of times that's why we still try to carry the bikes. We've had, my mechanics have sat and talked with me numerous times while we're out at events saying, why do we still have the cars? Why do we still have the bikes? Because we put, maybe during the season, I might put 20, 25 bikes out on course, and that's it.
Right.
The bikes look great on the top of the car. They're a lot of promotion. But in the end, do we really bring them? Well, you know what? For that person that I did put on a bike because I just couldn't fix something on their bike and I put them on another bike and sent them, it helped. And that's how they got to the finish line. And we actually had, we've had a second place win, or not second place win, but a second place finish at the Chris Thader crit in the pro race on one of our race support bikes in the men's field, and a woman, like down at the Doyleston crit, a woman won the field on one of our neutral support bikes. So it happens, you know.
Yeah.
Do you find
some racers can not anything.
do you find you use the bikes more at crits than the road and the other events?
No, actually, cyclocross is the place where we use the most bikes.
Okay.
And a lot of it just has to do with that split decision. You know, here's the thing. You know, when we go to cross races, it's a whole nother ball game too, because we get to know everybody where they're racing. We have, you know, our mechanics. They sit there and they watch the racers go by as they go by, because you know you're only talking 30 to 50 racers, and a lot of times at a local race per field. So they'll literally watch and go by, and as people go by, they watch their pedals. So if they see someone running to the pits that needs a bike, they'll either get someone to go find out what pedals they are, they already know what pedals they need, and or they'll run over to another section of the course, find out what they need, go back, get the bike set, and then all they have to do when the person comes in is literally just adjust the seat height and send them on their way. I had a person last year, you know, that's kind of the whole thing, is trying to get people set up like that. I had a person last year at a race over in Vermont at a cross race break his chain. I saw him break his chain. I saw him come around a turn. He got on the gas coming through a sandy section, and I saw his chain snapped. So he runs the bike to me, and as he's running, I found out what he had for pedals, because his one of his family members was right there. They told me he needed Shimano pedals. I threw him on the bike. They actually happened to know his saddle height too, so I was able to get that set. Got him on a bike. I ran over to the sand pit where his chain broke, grabbed his chain, ran back, broke a link out of it, put one of the new master links in it from KMC, got the bike back, tuned up, everything set up and ready to go, and in half a lap he was back on his own bike. So that comes down to,
That's awesome.
that's the training side of it. You know, it's just with my guys too, you know, it's just everybody. We follow suit, we just look at things and pay attention. And, you know, I mean, that's with all these different standards and all these different things that you have to do, you literally just pay attention. Because if you can do that and you can see what everybody's got going on, you know how to make those split second decisions faster.
Yeah, and I think you also it just makes me think when I hear you talking about making these second decisions and being able to you're taking a rotor off and 30 seconds and you got this rotor off of a wheel and you start to see the similarities and differences and you start knowing like what really works and what the real differences are. It reminds me of this time when 10-speed first came out and then Campy had that special chain and you're supposed to get this special tool and all this business, right? And then you find out like you could ride anybody's 10-speed chain, it was fine. There's these things that like people try to promote like, oh, this is very, very unique, and you're like, no, it's really not very unique at all. In fact, I could just use this thing, right? And so I'm sure you start tuning into those things. You're like, hey, they're gonna come in with power tap power pedals. Yeah, look, Keo carbons are gonna be fine, and you start knowing what's compatible and what's gonna work. Which is a huge advantage, and it's a huge thing when a neutral support can know those things and be able, because it just adds to your repertoire and your ability to be able to get somebody back on their bike that quickly and save those critical seconds. That's really cool.
Yep, yeah, it's definitely one of those things. I mean, we tag all our wheels in certain ways. Like if you look at all of our wheels, anything that's 11-speed has either a spray painted or taped red quick release on it, so that we know that it's 11-speed. 10-speed doesn't have anything. Everybody jokes around because they'll always see zip ties around the hub on ours. They're like, what does the zip tie signify? Like, what's that there for? And that's literally just so I can tell that you have one of my neutral support wheels. Right. We're walking, we get done and people forget that they have a neutral support wheel because they've been on it for 80 miles and they're like, they're comatose. They're like just trying to get back to their car to get some food in them and stuff. And they just leave, so we're like running around the parking lots and looking for them. So yeah, I mean, we tag things in certain ways so that we know this, we know that, and can be able to decipher when we're looking for the right piece in the car too, So, right. You want to keep going with standards. Oh my gosh, how about derailleur hangers?
even with manufacturers, right? You can't even say, well, like I'm riding a Trek, like which year? It's like it's crazy. Yeah. They're always changing them.
So in the 3 vehicles that we have, each one of them has a neutral support box, cables, housing, They've all got hydraulic disc brake bleed kits because I don't expect my mechanics to carry one in their toolbox because they make a mess. They've got the fluid for that stuff. There is extra derailleurs, extra cassettes, extra chains, extra cleat screws, brake pads, carbon versus aluminum, disc brake pads now for all the disc brake road stuff and some of the mountain bike stuff too, just in case, because occasionally we run into that. But there's just all this different stuff. But there is actually one container in the box that has derailleur hangers on it, and they're organized by number based on wheels manufacturing codes. There's over 130 derailleur hangers in each car. I actually have more derailleur hangers in one of those boxes than I keep in the shop. We run into so many more bikes out on the road, so we actually keep more derailleur hangers in the cars than we actually have at the bike shop. One car has more than the whole bike shop has in it right now. And we probably keep more derailleur hangers in our car than most bike shops have total. So, I'll be on the road and I've stopped at places, and guys at the bike shops that know me, they're like, "Hey, do you have this derailleur hanger in your car?" And I was like, "Let me see if I've got two. If I've got two, I can let you have one."
And if they come to the shop, you're like, "Well, we don't have it here, but let's go out to the car."
I had one of the local Trek dealerships call me once, actually asking me if I had one of the Trek derailleur hangers because they were out of stock of it. So it was pretty funny. But they know we have it. They know we've got it in stock usually. So.
You're gonna be like you're gonna be this niche business, and you're gonna be this derailleurhangers.com, and for those hard to find vintage for that 10-speed 2009 Trek.
we had an old Kestrel that I saw it pop up on. It popped up on like one of the forums that's on Facebook, like one of those little groups that's on Facebook. And we had an old Kestrel derailleur hanger pop up on there just the other day. So I shot my manager for the bike shop, who also manages the inventory for the race support program. I had him check and see, and sure enough, we had that derailleur hanger, and it was like, it's like a 15-year-old Kestrel. He's like, "Yeah, we got 4 of them.
We got multiple."
The bike shop's only been open for 9 years, but somehow we've got 4 of those derailleur hangers.
That's awesome. You guys are a repository of derailleur hangers now. So, what do you think? Where's the future for what you're doing with the bike shop, with the race support? Where do you see yourself going forward?
I'm working on a lot of things. Working on a lot of things with the bike shop, and unfortunately, those things take time, and that is actually kind of the mutual support program is running. It's happening. It's not changing. It's not growing any right now. Like I said, we dropped a couple races just because if it doesn't make sense for us or the promoter, I'm not going to push the promoter to try to get us there, because in the end of the day, if they have to pay out for us to be there and they can't afford to keep the race running because of stuff like that, it's not worth us being there. If a race is having trouble, a couple times I had phone calls last year with them, and I'd ask the race promoter a couple days before the race, "How many people do you have pre-reg?" And they're like, "Oh, we've only got this many." I'm like, "Then we're not going to come. Don't worry. I'm not going to hold you to it. We had a contract, but no, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to make you fork over the money for me to come for 40, 50 racers who, because you tried to put this on and it just didn't work this year. Make it happen with what you got. Hopefully your numbers will increase with day ofs, and then next year we'll talk about it again." That's kind of what the thing is happening. And gravel's huge. Like, I love the way the whole gravel scene's going, and we've been in talks with some of the bigger gravel races in Vermont, trying to just see how we can fit in or kind of work in. I run into some, just like the Black Flag Challenge, I run into some legal issues when it comes to running certain vehicles on certain roads and things like that. So we always have to work around those. When Tony and I talked for the 4-wheeler last year, you can't drive a 4-wheeler on regular roads. You can drive them on the side of dirt roads, side roads, things like that, but you can't on the main roads. But he was able to talk to the police and get an okay so that we were able to do that, because a lot of times in a situation like that, the police see it's a benefit for the race and it helps the race. So it's really just it's trying to do what we can on that side of things to help promote the events and make them look bigger than they are. Because
Right.
If they look bigger than they are, the next year they're going to be bigger. And the year after that, that's one of the things we love coming out to. We love coming out to Western New York cycling because it is getting so much bigger. I look at it every time I come out there; it just feels bigger, and it's it's such a great atmosphere. I mean, it just, I've got a couple, I hate to say it, I got a couple triathlons that I like to go work neutral support because the promoters do such a great job at it. I hate to say it.
That's all right. We could like triathlons. I'm not doing one anytime soon, but we could like. I do have a question for you about the gravel. We'd love having you at the gravel, and I think it's a huge. I think it's a huge advantage no matter what, and we always have you at everything we do for that reason. But I think it's definitely a huge advantage with the gravel because you do get a lot of mechanicals, and you want people to be able to finish, and you want to keep people in contention. But one of the things that I always get questions about, just personally, and people that were when they knew you were coming on that wanted to hear from you because you're a much better for this question than I am anyway, is people are always asking me like, what should I run for tires at gravel? What should I run for tires? So I hate answering that question because, well, I don't race them. So what do I know about what you run for tires? I'm in the truck, but and I think it's such a loaded question to begin with, but you're there, you're seeing this, you're at the front of all of these races. So what advice would you give, particularly with the tire question? And then, maybe any other sort of tech setup going into, particularly for our gravel stuff and our courses.
Right. Tires, that's a crazy one. Run what you know. That's the best thing that I can say for that. Yeah, in certain types of events and certain things, you got to know, like, oh, do I need a mud tire? Can I run a file tread? Don't grab a file tread on Thursday night at the bike shop because you're going to race on Saturday and you think it's going to be dry and you think it's going to be perfect for it. If you've never ridden a file tread, don't run it the first day when you show up to a race. You have to know what that tire is going to do. You got to know what the pressure is going to be. You got to play around with the pressure. Did you buy a gravel tire? You had a 42 gravel tire that had knobbies on it, but then you went and bought a 38 file tread, or vice versa. What's it going to do? So you really need to spend time riding the tire and kind of getting a feel for it. I personally, this is my own personal preference. I have actually been running, what is it called? The Buzzsaw, I believe it is, from Specialized. It's an inverted tread. If anybody has been racing bikes for a long, long time, Avocet used to have a tire. I think it was called the Connect or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but that's what it was. It was an inverted tread. It had cuts down into it like a car tire, but it rolled really fast. So that's kind of what this one is. It's kind of that same way. It's got cuts down into it. And I really like the way it rides, but it has no side knob. So if you're not ready for that transition of nice, smooth rolling like you have on a road bike, when you lean over on the side of the tire, it corners well, and you're not going to feel that transition onto a knob. It just kind of transitions easily over through a turn. Whereas if you get on something that's a file in the middle, but it's got some big honking knobs on it, was it the Chicane from Challenge, I believe? That tire, I love that tire when you're riding on grass and sand and stuff like that for cross. But on gravel, to me, that thing feels slow. Because when you're coming around a turn or something like that, I don't like the knob to catch. I also don't like that transition feel, which is funny because when I get on a mountain bike, it's totally different. I want a big honking knob on my side of my tire, so when I lean into a turn on my mountain bike, I can really grip it. I don't have the same feeling with that on a gravel or road bike. I like to have that rounded tire feel so that it curves over. And anybody that's going to ride might not have the same feeling than me. They just have to try different things. So it really comes down to making those choices, and you should be figuring out the tires you need right now to be able to be ready for the Swain race. If you're thinking about that, and the Swain race is a crapshoot too, because who knows what the weather's going to be like. Last year I was on the motorcycle and I had to go into the ski area there and buy some hand warmers and toe warmers from the ski shop, stick into my boots and in my gloves to stay warm. And It was muddy and it was a little icy in spots because that's what it was like. And luckily I'm pretty comfortable on my motorcycle in those conditions, so I didn't have any problems. But man, I felt bad for some of the racers being out there, and because you just didn't, the some of the sections were super sloppy and super wet, other sections were super dry and fast. Some of the sections you couldn't even see what you were riding on because it was so foggy. So
it was a crazy weather year last year. I'm hoping we get a little earlier spring this year on it, but that's kind of the fun of gravel sometimes. But I think it's also it's also nice to be able to kind of know what you're getting into.
Right,
So
and that's another thing, like being prepared to go to your event. You know, it's not just it comes the tire selection comes down to all of your preparation. You know, have a pack of hand warmers because you don't know what it's going to do in the spring. You know, and I should have had hand warmers in one of the vehicles for us on the motorcycles. Didn't even think about it for some reason. When I was at one of the years I was at Bat and Kill, we were all running hand warmers on the motorcycles. You know, we just didn't even think about it. We had them with us, and I just, for some reason, that morning I messed up, and I was like, you know, so my guy on the 4-wheeler and my other guy on the other motorcycle was like, here you go, guys. You know, here's hand warmers. I just ran in and grabbed some, and they were like, oh, thank you. So, actually, the 4-wheeler, he didn't need the hand warmers because that's got heated grips. Because I use that on the side when I'm doing my ski area work that you've probably seen if you follow my Instagram page. So I put heated grips on that, so he was more than happy because he had heated grips on that. I got to put that on the motorcycle this year. So,
Right.
for sure. All right, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in April at Dirty Bikes, man.
definitely, yeah. We've been prepping the bikes, prepping the car, getting stuff ready. Got the motorcycle. Actually, I changed the motorcycle oil the other day on all the motorcycles, so that's all set and done. So yeah, we're kind of tooling up here and slowly getting ready. So it's not a mad dash at the end to be ready to roll out there.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
getting close, and you know, if anybody's putting on a race, I tell people all the time, I can't recommend it enough. It's a huge asset to have you guys there on so many levels. So, you know, hopefully people use that good sense and they're getting a hold of you and they're getting you at the events because it's a big deal, man. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, we'll definitely look forward to bumping into you on some road events. You won't see me out in the gravel, but if it's some good pave.
We're gonna get him there eventually. He says that now.
Looks
But,
like TV. We'll get you on one.
yeah, we'll get him there.
The tracker road, you'll see me, but we don't need neutral support of the track, so we're good there. But we'll hopefully see you, bump into you on some road events, though, and I'll stop by your tent and say hi. But it's great having you on, though, Jeremy. It's awesome hearing about just not only your experience level, but what you're bringing in preparation to these events that people can really count on. And I think that would even gave me a bit of an education of what you guys are really doing. You're not just winging something, showing up with a few wheels and saying, yeah, I got some neutral support. You guys are serious business out there. And I think at any level that people are able to experience basically the highest level of neutral support, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put your Instagram and your website and everything in the notes of the show too. So if people want to get a hold of you and follow the races you're at, and be sure to go to the races that you're at and support those events that are going that extra mile to give that much more to racers too. So we'll make sure we get all that out there.
Cool, that's great. If you don't mind me giving one, let me put in one little extra plug. We got we actually run this program through the bike shop, and I don't know if I've actually talked to you too much about it. But a few years back, and you probably remember Jason,
Yep.
Jaybird DeLillo, he passed away. And when Jason passed away, I had the opportunity to buy all of his bikes from his family. I took all those bikes and cleaned everything up, made it all fixable, rideable, sold all of his bikes off to generate some money, and we actually purchased a fleet of bikes. They're all cyclocross bikes, and we've got a run of sizes. And so what we do with them for the gravel and for the cyclocross scene, because Jay was super big into racing those things.
Mhm.
In his memory, we actually loan those bikes out to anybody that wants to get in it. If they've never tried it before and they want to try it and they want to do it on the proper bike, whether it's racing cyclocross or racing gravel, we have a fleet of bikes. If we're going to one of your events or to any event that we're going to be at, if somebody from that area wants to try it, all they got to do is call the shop, sign up for a bike. We'll bring it there. If they have clipless pedals or if they have shoes already and we can bring pedals, it's just a program that it's really all about Jason and his name. And, it's just his legacy of how he would literally loan you his race bike if you wanted to try a race before his event would happen. He was that type of person and that type of, character for the bicycle racing. He was inspirational in that aspect of how he really wanted to get people on bikes and racing. So we, at the shop, we decided that we were going to do this for him in his name. So that's there. It's called the Jaybird Fleet on Facebook. that's how you can find it and how you can get it in touch with us to be able to get a bike. But like I said, if somebody wants to do your gravel race and they don't have a bike to do it on, or they've got a mountain bike but they'd really like to try it on a gravel style or cross style bike, all they've got to do is make a call and get a hold of us, and we can literally bring the bike out to the race for them. We'll fit them up and size them up and everything to the bike that day, and they'll be ready to ride it.
That's a phenomenal way to remember him. I didn't know him well, but when I put on Prattsburg for the first time, I was super nervous, and the race had gone on for a long time before I took it over and kind of did it to kind of keep it going. And he came up to me after the race, and he was a dude who I always looked up to as just a good racer and a great gravel racer. And, I knew who he was, even though we'd never met before. And he came up and he was like, thanks for doing this, and just super gracious. And he said, it's always about the racers make the race hard. And you guys did a great job. And it was so nice to hear it from a guy like that. And he really went out of his way to do it because he knew how important it was. So,
he would always go out of his way to thank anybody for putting out an event or helping an event. But like I said, he went out of his way, literally would give. I sponsored him. I actually gave him a bike to race. We raced together for so many years, and I actually gave him a bike to race on for a couple seasons. And he was like, Jeremy, you don't mind, do you, if I'd let this beginner person race on my race bike before an event? I'm like, Jay, it's your choice to do what you want to do with that. If that's going to help that person love cycling as much as you do, let him race on it. I don't care, and he would do whatever he could to try to get people into it. So I just, that was my thought. I was just like, I'm just going to do this, and we'll be able to, carry on his legacy of the love of racing. And there's no charge to be able to borrow one of the bikes. There's no cost of any sorts. And we don't even, it's like, we'll help you. We'll tell you, hey, what's your local bike shop? Okay, so, go there. If you're looking for a bike like this is kind of what you want to get. You don't have to buy that brand. Just get whatever you want, but enjoy riding a bike and enjoy, what he was doing, the way he would do it. So we're just trying to promote that.
Cool. That's awesome.
Awesome. Jeremy, it's awesome talking to you too, and it sounds like a great program. So, we'll put some links up, and we'll be looking for you soon.
All right, sounds good.